Hi, everybody. It's cool to see all of the different places that all of you are joining us from. I'm joining from London, but I'm originally from Princeton, New Jersey in the US. I've been at the DPU since 2015. I did my master's here in BUD in 2015 to 2016, and then I immediately transitioned into being an MPhil student and now a PhD student. And now I'm in the last year of my PhD. So I should say I worked for many years. I did my undergrad in political science and then also in Middle East studies. So I had kind of a disciplinary grounding, and then I also had a regional studies sort of thing going on. When I finished my undergrad, I worked for 7 years before coming back to school. So I did a lot of different types of jobs in different places. So by the time I decided that I was ready to go back to school, it was because I had a clear idea, more or less, of what I wanted to do, a clear focus, which is that I wanted to study urban violence, which is something I've been doing in different ways since my undergrad. But I wanted to actually answer some questions that had been brewing in myself for a long time. So I came back to study urban design. Giovanna was one of my teachers, and then so I had to understand a lot about how to think in an interdisciplinary way, and then from there, moving into the PhD, I had to take that interdisciplinarity and make it my own in a way. My own process of learning. So what Don was talking about before, about independent and active learners. So in terms of being motivated, a PhD is a very long process. It can be very isolating. It can be it's almost certain to be very disorienting at various moments. And I think to have that motivation, to have that fire burning in you somewhere, to be able to power you through many years of doing this on your own. In terms of being able to manage yourself, yeah, so I don't remember, I think Michael mentioned it, and Don mentioned it, that as a PhD student, you have 2 supervisors. Both of mine are in the DPU. Usually that's the case, but not always is that the case. And different supervisors have different styles of supervision. So as you're sort of looking for a supervisor, you'll also sort of look at what sort of style they will be supervising you in, whether they're kind of more hands-off or whether they're, very kind of structured and give you benchmarks along the way in different things. So to think about first what your style of learning is, what stresses you out, or what moves you, what can motivate you. Personally, I prefer less structure, and my primary supervisor gives me a lot of space to experiment and to explore and to go in different directions. So in terms of managing that, finding a supervisor with whom you have an affinity in that way, both in terms of your interests, but also in the way that you want to work together. And then once you have that kind of core, then you sort of need to do the rest. So figuring out how to advance. The department obviously supports you in lots of different ways, and I've really enjoyed all the different interactions that I've had with all the different professors and the different students at different parts of their PhD. I've done work with master students as well. So the department is super supportive. Also, I've like the research cluster that Barbara mentioned, the urban transformations cluster. I've gotten funding to run a workshop from that cluster. So there's lots of different opportunities and ways that you can sort of be involved in the department as a PhD student, in addition to as a master student. Then in terms of the next step that Don mentioned, to reflect on your learning. So yeah, a PhD, because it's this like intensely individual process in a lot of ways. You're doing it on your own. It's you ultimately having to make a contribution to knowledge. You need to be reflecting on how to do that, but also how to care for yourself and to care for the people who are part of your process. So when you go do data collection, I did data collection for 6 months in San Salvador in 2018. You have to think about how you're going to build partnerships with those people, how you're going to make the relationships with them equitable. It's not just you going there to get the information you need and then write up your PhD and be a doctor. There's a lot more to that, and DPU really pushes that and gives you a lot of support and a lot of inspiration in trying to figure out how to do that. So there's a large reflective component in terms of the ethics of how you work as a researcher. And then finally, the last step to activate all of that. So you're not, certainly not as a master's student, and then even less maybe as a PhD student, you're not receiving things, you are making the things. It's overwhelming sometimes, but it's really amazing to have a few years to just see what your brain can do in different ways, to have people supporting you, working with you, cheering you on, willing to speak with you and willing to nurture you, for you to figure out what it is that you want to do with yourself and how you see yourself as a researcher. So I'll stop there for now, but I'm happy to answer any other questions about the PhD experience or also the master's experience.